Ladies and gentlemen, what would you do if the very person you feared the most ended up saving your life? What happens when a lifetime of hate is broken in a single moment of humanity? This isn't just a story about prejudice. This is about awakening, about transformation, about realizing that everything you believed about someone was wrong. For 30 years, I lived with hate in my heart, not because of something a Muslim did to me, but because of what I thought they were. Then one day, in the most unexpected life or death moment, one of them reached out his hand and changed my life forever. This isn't just my story. This could be yours. Because in a world divided by fear, it only takes one act of truth to set a soul free. So don't scroll away. Don't blink. Because by the end of this speech, you won't just see them differently. You'll see yourself differently. Let's begin. The roots of hate often begin in the quiet corners of childhood, where belief systems are shaped not by facts, but by the environment, voices of authority, and emotional cues picked up long before critical thinking takes root. In this case, the speaker grew up in a setting where Muslims were not just misunderstood, they were portrayed as others, as threats, as people to be feared. This perception wasn't born out of personal experience, but was passed down like a worn-out story, told at every dinner table, in school hallways, and especially through media portrayals that leaned heavily into stereotypes. Every time a crime or act of violence made the news and involved a Muslim-sounding name, it added another brick to the wall of bias. The speaker's family, shaped by their own fears or ignorance, would speak about Muslims with suspicion or outright disdain, rarely, if ever, questioning where these ideas came from or whether they were fair. As the speaker grew, this foundation of inherited hate began to solidify. Teachers never brought up Muslim contributions to science, art, or philosophy. Friends echoed the same suspicions. Movies showed Muslims with guns, never with love or compassion. Religion was reduced to headlines. Islam became synonymous with extremism in the speaker's mind, and no one around them challenged that idea. There was never a moment when someone said, "Have you actually talked to a Muslim? Do you know what they believe?" Instead, the speaker absorbed what was available: news bites, overheard conversations, cultural jokes. And from that stew of misinformation, fear was born. That fear grew into quiet hatred. It wasn't always loud or violent, but it shaped decisions: avoiding people who looked Muslim, being uneasy around headscarves or beards, assuming the worst intentions without evidence. The speaker may not have thought of themselves as hateful, just cautious or realistic, but underneath that surface was a dehumanizing worldview, shaped not by experience, but by decades of programming. Hate, in this sense, didn't start with a choice. It started with a lack of exposure, a lack of dialogue, and a flood of negativity that filled the vacuum. The speaker didn't know any Muslims personally, which made it easier to believe anything about them. Without a face to the name, a soul to the stereotype, the hate was left unchallenged and unhealed for 30 long years. For 30 years, the speaker's perception of Muslims was built on distance, emotional, cultural, and personal. They had never sat across from a Muslim at a dinner table, never shared a real conversation, never laughed or cried with one. That absence of direct interaction created a void, and in that void, stereotypes were free to grow unchecked. Muslims were not people, they were a concept, an idea shaped by the loudest, most biased voices. The media played a crucial role in this. Headlines often associated Muslims with terrorism, conflict, and fear, rarely showing the ordinary, peaceful, and diverse lives of millions around the world. Films and TV shows reinforced the same image, often casting Muslims as villains or fanatics, further embedding the idea that Islam was synonymous with danger. When you don't know someone personally, it's easy to dehumanize them. It's easy to believe they're somehow different, less feeling, less loving, less human. This psychological distance allowed the speaker to place Muslims into a mental category separate from us. It wasn't necessarily hatred in every moment, it was apathy, suspicion, an unconscious bias that painted every interaction before it even began. The speaker didn't question this worldview because they never had a reason to. everyone around them seemed to believe the same things. Their schools didn't teach them about Islamic history or the contributions Muslims made to science, medicine, or philosophy. They didn't see Muslims in leadership roles in their community. There were no reminders that Muslims lived ordinary lives just like anyone else. The absence of representation led to an absence of empathy. In this mental state, the speaker formed assumptions before understanding. A hijab became a red flag, a beard became a warning sign, Arabic became a threatening language. All of this happened without a single meaningful encounter, without ever looking into the eyes of a Muslim person and seeing a shared humanity. Fear became the default response. The speaker avoided conversations that could challenge their views. They never sought to learn because they didn't think they needed to. They thought they already knew the truth, when in reality, they had been living in a cage of inherited ignorance. The longer the distance remained, the stronger the prejudice grew, becoming a quiet but powerful force in how the speaker saw the world. The turning point in the speaker's life came unexpectedly, in a moment of pure vulnerability, when control was lost and survival became the only focus. It wasn't a planned meeting, a thoughtful dialogue, or a social initiative that challenged their lifelong beliefs. It was a life-threatening situation that stripped away every layer of pride, bias, and assumption. The speaker was in an unfamiliar place, far from home, and a sudden crisis struck. A medical emergency, an accident, or perhaps even a violent encounter. In that moment, everything that once seemed important vanished. Years of prejudice meant nothing when faced with the prospect of death. The speaker was helpless, alone, and desperate for someone to care enough to help. Out of the chaos, a figure emerged, a man who, by every appearance and detail, matched the image the speaker had feared for most of their life. He was clearly Muslim. Maybe it was the way he dressed, the way he spoke, or the name he gave. Under different circumstances, the speaker would have avoided him, crossed the street, or clutched their belongings a little tighter. But this time, there was no space for avoidance. The only thing that mattered was survival, and this man was the only one who stopped to help. Without hesitation, he took control of the situation, administered first aid, or made a call for emergency services. He comforted the speaker, stayed present, and treated them not as an enemy or a stranger, but as a human being in need. The speaker didn't expect kindness. For 30 years, they believed kindness wouldn't come from someone like him, but that belief was broken in seconds by the reality in front of them. There was no exchange of ideologies, no debates, just action. And that action cut deeper than any argument ever could. The Muslim man showed compassion without knowing who the speaker was, what they believed, or how much hate they had carried toward people like him. He acted out of his values, his faith, and his humanity. That moment began to unravel everything the speaker thought they knew. It wasn't dramatic or theatrical. It was real, raw, and undeniable. The person the speaker feared the most became the one who saved their life. And that act of mercy planted a seed that would later grow into complete transformation. The moment of being saved by a Muslim didn't just challenge the speaker's beliefs, it shattered them. It wasn't a slow realization or a gradual understanding. It was a deep, jarring confrontation with the truth that years of hate had been built on lies. The stereotypes, the fear, the assumptions, they all fell apart in the face of that single act of humanity. The speaker had been taught that Muslims were to be feared, distrusted, even avoided. Yet in their darkest hour, when everything was on the line, it wasn't someone familiar who stepped forward. It wasn't a friend, a neighbor, or someone who looked like them. It was a Muslim, someone the speaker had spent a lifetime fearing, who showed up with selfless courage and compassion. That moment created an internal conflict so intense that the speaker couldn't ignore it. How could the very person they had been conditioned to see as dangerous be the one who saved them without hesitation or judgment? The contradiction was too loud to silence. The image of that man, the way he looked, the calm in his voice, the care in his actions, stayed with the speaker long after the physical wounds began to heal. What was supposed to be a brief moment of emergency became a lasting symbol of everything they had misunderstood. The walls built over 3 decades didn't fall instantly, but they began to crack. For the first time, the speaker saw the difference between the narrative they had believed and the reality they had lived. Kindness had come from where it was least expected, and that fact alone made the speaker question everything. What if the hate had been wrong all along? What if those stories, those fears, had been nothing more than shadows on the wall? There was no speech, no lecture, no demand for gratitude. The Muslim man left quietly, having done what he believed was right, but his actions spoke volumes, louder than words ever could. It became clear to the speaker that goodness, compassion, and bravery are not bound by religion or culture. The stereotypes that once seemed so solid were now exposed as hollow. In that moment, the speaker didn't just witness an act of mercy. They witnessed the truth, and once the truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. After the life-altering moment of being saved, the speaker found himself standing at the edge of an inner transformation they could no longer deny. What followed wasn't immediate clarity or peace. It was a storm of emotions: confusion, guilt, shame, and curiosity. Everything they had believed for 3 decades began to unravel, and they were forced to confront not just the lies they had been told, but the role they played in accepting them without question. The image of the Muslim man who saved their life stayed etched in their mind, not just as a person, but as a challenge to their entire worldview. That moment sparked the beginning of a difficult yet necessary journey, a journey of unlearning, of asking questions that had never been asked, and of seeking answers from sources that had been ignored or dismissed before. The speaker began to explore Islam with a fresh lens, not through the distorted filters of media and fear, but through personal encounters, reading, and quiet observation. They walked into a mosque for the first time with hesitation, not knowing what to expect, and were met with warmth and hospitality. They sat with people they had once feared and listened to their stories. Stories of family, hardship, kindness, and dreams that sounded no different from their own. They began to see Muslims not as a group defined by headlines, but as individuals with complexity, emotion, and humanity. The process wasn't comfortable. The speaker wrestled with guilt over the hate they had carried and the opportunities for connection they had missed. But each conversation, each book, and each moment of openness chipped away at the ignorance that had once seemed impenetrable. They began to see how blind hatred feeds itself in silence, and how truth reveals itself in relationships. What once felt like a rigid belief system now felt fragile, ready to be rebuilt with honesty and humility. More than anything, the journey was a mirror. It showed the speaker not just who Muslims really were, but who they themselves had become and who they wanted to be moving forward. The realization that one's identity doesn't have to be rooted in inherited fear was both liberating and painful. It required the courage to admit being wrong, to change, and to let go of the pride that clings to old beliefs, even when they no longer serve the truth. The speaker's transformation from hate to healing became the most meaningful chapter of their life, not because it erased the past, but because it redeemed it through change. After 30 years of living in the shadows of fear, the light of one human moment redefined everything. That rescue did more than save the speaker's physical life. It cracked open a hardened heart and allowed empathy to take root. As the speaker began to share their story, they did so, not to boast about personal growth, but to hold up a mirror to others who may still be where they once were. Hate had shaped their perspective for decades, but healing gave their life a renewed sense of purpose. It allowed them to finally understand that the divisions between people are often illusions maintained by silence, and that love, courage, and mercy know no religious or racial boundary. The speaker began speaking out, not to convert, not to condemn, but to connect. They told audiences about the assumptions they had held, the lies they believed, and the painful realization that they had let prejudice rob them of years of understanding. The reactions were mixed. Some praised the honesty, while others resisted the idea that such transformation was even possible. But the speaker kept going, not because it was easy, but because they knew someone else might be one experience away from breaking their own cycle of inherited hate. Every time the speaker told their story, they remembered the face of the Muslim man who saved them. That man never asked for recognition. He disappeared quietly, leaving behind only his actions to speak for him. But it was those actions that gave the speaker the courage to rebuild their life on new values, compassion, truth, and humility. In time, the speaker also found themselves forming deep friendships with Muslims, something they had once thought impossible. They were no longer just hearing stories, they were part of them. Meals were shared, prayers were witnessed, and mutual respect replaced the fear that once stood between them. They realized that forgiveness of others and of oneself is a powerful act of faith in humanity. Though they couldn't change the past, they could use it as a testimony of what's possible when hate is replaced by truth and distance is replaced by understanding. The speaker's healing didn't just come from being saved. It came from choosing to stay awake to the lessons of that moment for the rest of their life. What started as a life rooted in fear and misunderstanding ended in a moment of unexpected mercy that redefined everything I thought I knew. I spent 30 years hating people I had never spoken to, judging souls I had never met, and fearing a faith I had never studied. But one act of courage, one moment of kindness from a man I was taught to hate, shattered all of it. That moment didn't just save my life, it gave me a new one. It taught me that love is louder than hate, that humanity runs deeper than headlines, and that no belief is ever so permanent it can't be changed by the truth. If I could unlearn 30 years of darkness, then maybe, just maybe, others can too. So I stand before you not as someone proud of who I was, but as someone grateful for who I've become. And that journey began the day a Muslim saved me. Thank you for listening with an open heart. May your path be guided by truth, shaped by love, and strengthened by the courage to see people for who they truly are, not what the world tells you believe about them. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and never underestimate the power of one moment to change a life, including your own. Good luck on your journey, wherever it takes you.